Hey, welcome back. We have a knife here. This is the second. Let me just take this off screen because anytime I buy directly from the manufacturer, they inevitably put some sort of personal info in the bag for the receipt. Totally what they should be doing. But appreciate your patience while I get that out of the way here. But this is the second knife in the, I don't know if you'd call it a series, but the family, Tactile knife, Maverick family, I guess you could maybe call it. Yeah, excited to get hands on it, although it's become pretty clear that a lot of people have, reasonable concerns with the way that these knives are working. I don't think that's like overly surprising. Excuse me. But there's definitely some, I guess, surprise from people that maybe didn't have bug outs or similar knives that are, axis locks on washers. When they're on washers versus bearings, you're going to get either a little bit of blade play or a little bit of not drop sheddiness. And that's just, in my experience, how they are. I haven't seen one on washers I can think of that, didn't meet that, didn't fall into that problem. Wow, I can tell right away though, after having handled the micarta version here, man, this new one is way heavier. Feels very substantial. So in that sense, the materials, wow, that feels really nice. Oh, it's interesting. It's titanium with a steel liner. I didn't expect that. I thought maybe the titanium one would be a full titanium, but it still has a steel liner. Interesting. And case in point. All right, let's try it again. All right, it is, so this one, unlike the other that I just got, feels like it's probably been tightened enough to not have blade play. There might be a little bit there, but if so, it's very negligible. But you sacrifice the action when it's like that. It's not terrible, as you can see. It's definitely doable still. But yeah, these are just a little less than I think a lot of people had hoped. I think there's still really good value for the money if you think about what is. Wow, really nice edge on this one. You've got here a titanium handled American made knife that's, I don't know, 8.5 inches. I think I just measured. What is it here? 8.25 inches with, like a 3.5-inch blade for $350 with really nice milling and finishing details and everything. So there's definitely a lot to love. It's interesting. I didn't realize this titanium would have the blue and the bolt would not be blue. I missed that somehow. I don't know if I just only saw a lot of pictures of this side or what, but that's interesting. Almost like kind of want to swap the hardware on these. Let's see how that would look. Just full tie, assuming that this one has tie hardware. But yeah, the immediate impression of this one is much more handle heavy. You can see the balance point is quite a bit further back versus the micarta one. It's kind of right up towards the front there, if not, yeah, it's like right there. Versus you try that same spot on this one, and it's gonna fall over. It's like significantly further back due to the titanium handles. But man, this feels really nice. Wish they had a little jimping up here. I think that'd be nice. So I was able to get it to drop shut there. This titanium one feels nice enough that it might be worth like doing the work to see if after enough flicking and flopping and enough of these, this is, this was the case with my bug outs too, where they would come you know, not drop shut. And then over time, working in oh, that's nice. So that's actually something I've not seen happen on my micarta one, is to be able to flip it back with just the thumb and not the, so that's nice. On the other one, I really had to use 2 fingers in order to get it to fully deploy. So it seems like you get a little more of the 1 finger lock with the titanium, which makes sense. Things just are a little more solid, and the bar is probably able to go more straight. It looks like it gets pretty wonky when you pull it, but maybe just more straight than on this guy. I don't know. Yeah, but that's one of those things about bar locks is I've seen some like the Kunwu and the Drop Bear where you can really use 1 finger deployment. And I think if you work out your, yeah, like this bug out, I've used quite a bit. And it's pretty freaking drop shut at this point, but this thing actually has a ton of play going on. So I gotta tighten her down. Yeah, still quite a bit of play. Bar locks, man. I'm not the biggest fan. I'm a fan of Tactile. To me, this knife is worth the look. It's got 63 Rockwell hardness MagnaCut, but I don't have like a significant collection of Benchmades because I'm not a big Axis lock fan, not a big bar lock fan. I think it's just not, it's not the best position also. Like you got to do some things like Spidey flicks, and this happens sometimes with Demcos, by the way, on the Shark lock, don't get me wrong, but I feel like more than anywhere else, like because it's on both sides, you kind of end up oftentimes getting yourself like blocking the bar from doing what it needs to do when it goes through the motion here. As you can see, as it goes through the motion, it needs to be able to move. And sometimes I find that it's hard to let it do that. But this one feels like it's, you know, maybe opening up a little bit as I get into it. Yeah, I like this titanium. I think this may be worth the, you know, worth the effort to try and break it in. The micarta one, I didn't feel that way as strongly about. I felt like it was a really nice light carry knife, but honestly, the thing that bothered me about this is I was sitting here trying to justify, aside from the looks, which I could give it the heads, you know, the nod on, trying to justify it against the bug out, which I already think is a very overpriced knife. Now it has the MagnaCut and it's a little bigger, but you know, I was kind of going, this is kind of like a bigger, heavier bug out. You still have the same issue with the flexibility in the scales. It's not as bad probably as the bug out, but it's not much better. And I think overall the bug out handle, I kind of like the feel of it more. It's just a little more neutral in the hand. The bug outs are just a great knife, man. And this is nice. It's like a nice full-size knife, but it's a little like skinny and slicey for a full size, and it just kind of like sort of oddly straddles the lightweight EDC and like big knife world and doesn't do it super well. So I feel like this one could be a great daily carry knife for, you know, the occasional user kind of thing, but I still by far take the Demco and G10 over that knife. And man, you're talking about, sorry, of course, I just worked on this and I apparently did over tighten the pivot. So let's get that down just a touch. Yeah. I just feel like for what it is, this knife does this EDC job in a better way than this one does for me. Sure, you get more cutting edge here. Oops. But man, I just really like the Shark lock. I don't know. Now, to its credit, $249 made in the USA, $249 made in Taiwan. So there is, you know, and S35 yen versus a 63 Rockwell hardness MagnaCut. There's some really compelling arguments for this knife. outside of the locking mechanism. It does some things really well in this micarta version. But anyways, let's get back to the matter at hand, which is, to me, this this comparison right here. I think these three are the ones that, you know, this is made in USA, $163 now, I think it is, MSRP, 161. It was 140 a few months ago, and then it went up, which is really disappointing, because I just don't think it's worth the money. But this is the knife that my brother carries every day in the field. He works for the city, and, you know, just does really good work, and uses his knife a lot, I should say. So he puts it to work a lot, is what I meant. And he loves that knife. So, you know, how do these compete? This one feels like a bigger knife because of the titanium. It just feels like, I'm not sure I could convince him to even carry this just because of the added weight. I would guess this is about 4-ounce knife. I remember I looked at some of the stats on these, but it was a little while ago, so I'm kind of just jumping into these videos. I remember this weighed in yesterday at 2.7 ounces. 3.8. Let me just double check that. I feel like sometimes right now this is sort of throwing off my numbers a little bit. Okay, 3.8 ounces. .6 ounces, 2.7 ounces, and then you go down to like 1.8 on this guy. 1.8, 1.9, 1.85 ounces. Right, so to me, this is a really interesting sort of bar lock comparison. Of course, you get in here, you're down to 1.5 on the mini bug out. Some of the better bar locks that I've interacted with, but I'm just not the biggest bar lock fan. I don't know what else to really say. And I don't think that anyone should be terribly surprised that this came out how it did. If you've spent any time around that type of lock, and that's kind of what you should expect, especially on, you know, for what it is. I don't know if everyone knew, though, that this was going to be a washer versus a bearing knife. So there's that factor. I could give some credit there for people that maybe didn't realize that that was going to be the case here. It's a pretty knife, though, man. That is a really nice knife. I'm really surprised that Metal Complex gave it such a good review, though, all things considered. He really, you know, kind of gave this thing the nod for a potential knife of the year. And I get maybe on the value prop, but I don't think it's like better than a TRM. So gotta say, I don't necessarily agree with that review that I saw. If I recall, that was what I recall. I've seen some really good reviews on this thing from top reviewers, and I'm just not, you know, I'm a big Tactile fan, by the way. Like, got one sitting right here that, you know, is one of my top knives. You know, when I talked about my top 20 I wouldn't sell, my flipper number 194 is in that list. Like, I'm a big fan of the thumb stud. It's one of the first higher end knives. I remember when I bought this, it's like, I think this may have been my first $300 knife, in fact. So big Tactile fan in general. This one was flawed. That one's flawed. You know, it's only their second knife that they've put out in production. So I guess all things considered, you got to give them a little credit for that. And yeah, you know what I'd love to see? I don't know if it's possible, but I'd love to see Tactile do a collaboration with Demco and see if they can get the Shark Lock into their series. That would be super cool. I think that could make just a phenomenal knife. And if you're wondering what happened to my hand, because I've mentioned this in some other videos, but sorry, I dropped my couch on my hand. It's almost healed, but I know it's a little unsightly, so sorry about that. What is growing on that man's hand? Yeah, I think that's all I really got on this one. Yeah, definitely a more substantial, better feel in the hand, less hot spotty than the micarta. I noticed the micarta has some hot spots, just being a little sharp in here and stuff. Not sure how they finish it differently on the titanium, but it's definitely rounder on the inside here and just feels better in the hand when you give it a good grip. So nice sizing and everything. It's a good knife. It's just not to me, like, you're not getting into the disruptor kind of knife territory, right? You're not into the, and granted, price difference, but you're not into the you know, the VC Edge kind of territory, the Demco territory with, you know, coming up with their own locking mechanism. You're not into the CGRB pyrite where the, you know, value is just so radically good that you just can't deny it. It would be if not for what Benchmade's already doing with an axis lock. I think, you know, and there's other knives, right, in the series, the 740 or whatever, I don't know, 940, whatever. I don't know the rest of the Benchmade super well, but other knives in the series that I think are compelling and probably more directly competitive. You know, if it wasn't for the Oz Roosevelt at 700 to 850 bucks, depending on the pattern, and the ANO and stuff. These are just really, really spectacular knives for what they are. The action is just so crisp and pleasing and impressive with zero lockup. I mean, no blade play, just perfect lockup. Yeah. Is lockup the right word? Am I using the wrong word there? Lockup. You know, when you suddenly say something, you don't really know what it means. I'm having one of those brain fart moments. But yeah, no blade play. So interesting knife for sure. Do a little close up before we part ways here. But I would not even close to consider giving this knife of the year. I'm surprised it got knife of the show at Blade Show in Texas. I know, you know, local Texas company, so there's probably a little bit of, you know, leniency there. But you know, Magna Cut 63, 64. There's a lot of goodness here. Don't get me wrong. But it's just not blowing my mind or anything like that. And I really wish if this was going to be a tie handle that they would do the whole thing in tie. I am really surprised to see a steel liner in there. I'm sure they're doing that for a reason. They're a smart company, so it probably makes it better for some reason. But, you know, that's kind of disappointing. That could have been bad. Thank you, fingernail, for protecting my finger. Yeah. Good knife. Nothing mind-blowing here for me, but a good knife. So hope you enjoyed that ramble. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.